L. Fisher links the OKC Thunder to trading for Cam Johnson, but does that actually make sense considering that the OKC Thunder are already a championship caliber team and don't really need to make any changes to the roster? Talk a little bit about that. Plus, Karl-Anthony Towns has a dominant performance in return to Minnesota against the Timberwolves, where he has some really big comments afterwards, and Anthony Edwards also calls out his team's offense. And then lastly, we're also going to look at the Milwaukee Bucks trying to add a compliment to Brook Lopez as they continue gearing up for their run in the Eastern Conference. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host, Hayes. But more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And I want to start off with this trade rumor from Jake L. Fisher, who has been on fire over the last 2 weeks, really, when it comes down to breaking a lot of trade news down. And he says this: I've heard Cam Johnson potentially having interest from OKC. Now, the reason why this is something that I wanted to talk about and discuss is mainly because the OKC Thunder are a team that I think people really do look at and say, and they should, they're clearly a championship contending team that really has a complete roster. Once Chet Holmgren comes back, they have really, in my opinion, no need to really kind of make any changes to that roster. Now, I would say this, that, you know, teams typically, when you stay stagnant, you may need to add some things to go on a run and things like that. But I think ultimately, this is a Thunder team that doesn't need to make any moves. And I'm looking at any team in the league, the OKC Thunder, with their youth, with their development, with having a player come back from injury, would still incorporate Isaiah Hartenstein as well. Like, I really don't see a need for this team right now to make any moves, especially when you look at what it would take to bring in Cam Johnson to that team as well. It's not like Cam Johnson's still on his rookie scale contract where it's an easy contract to match, and the OKC Thunder could flip one of their, you know, young players that they aren't using and a pick maybe to get him. No, it's not really that. Like Cam Johnson would take a nice effort in as far as matching the salaries just to get him in the building. So Jake L. Fisher mentioning this one is why I would say, take every trade rumor with a grain of salt. Cam Johnson's $22 million contract would mean that the OKC Thunder would have to include one of like the Aaron Wiggins, Kenrick Williams, Osman Dang, some of those players. And, they love Wiggins. They love Williams as well. And I don't see them really making a move of this caliber at this point in the season. Now, maybe it's something that the Thunder look to explore maybe at the end of the season. Maybe it's something that they have a disappointing out where they need some more shooting or something like that. They notice some more size could help them. But as of right now, I look at the OKC Thunder and I think they are perfectly fine just waiting and waiting this out, seeing where the season goes, and just seeing when Chet Holmgren comes back and what they look like upon that return. But it is interesting that Jake L. Fisher does mention this, and Fisher is somebody who I respect the fact that when he says something, I do believe that he's heard it. I don't know who he heard it from, but I do believe that somebody in an NBA front office did tell him that. But the OKC Thunder are a team that's in no urgency, nor should they be. And Sam Presti is a GM as well that typically he's fine building. He's fine developing. Yes, he went out and got Isaiah Hartenstein. He got Alex Caruso this year as well. But when you look at what they gave up for it, it made sense, right? It made sense for why they went out and got the players that they did. I just don't see, personally, the OKC Thunder making any move of this magnitude as of right now, and I don't think they should. They're one of, like I said, the few teams that really don't have to do anything right now with their roster to really continue to just ascend. And, the development, I get it that they had a disappointing outing in that NBA Cup championship game, but they're still 21-5 on the season. They're beating teams by an average of almost 12 points. They're on a current 6-game winning streak. They're 9-1 in their last 10. And they have a player like Chet that's still out with injury that's going to be making his return at some point this season. I just don't see it. I don't see why, any shape, form, or fashion, they need to be making a move anytime soon. By the end of January, Chet should be on his return back, and that's where this team is going to really start, maybe even being better than what they are right now, already leading the Western Conference. And that's a crazy thing to say about it. This team is leading the Western Conference with that point differential. They have a 3-game lead over the number 2 team, which is the Memphis Grizzlies. I just don't see them needing to make any moves right now. But maybe I'm tripping. Maybe, teams that always want to stay aggressive and continually add. It's not like Cam Johnson is a bad player that can't help teams out. Maybe I'm just a little bit not viewing that in the right way, but let me know what you guys think on that down below. The next topic I want to get into is this game last night with the Knicks and the Minnesota Timberwolves, in which the Knicks almost beat the Timberwolves by 30 points on their home court. Karl-Anthony Towns having 32 points, going 5 of 5 from three-point range, 10 of 12 from the field, with 20 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals. Karl-Anthony Towns had one of the best games of his NBA career. Also 29 from Mikal Bridges. They only needed 14 points from Jalen Brunson in this game. And this was a game that you could tell that the emotions were riding high for Karl-Anthony Towns. He got a great ovation coming into that arena again, and it's good that he got the respect that he deserved coming into that, considering what he did. And after the game, Karl-Anthony Towns talked about leaving Minnesota. He said this: "There was no part of me that was willing to leave, and life had a different path for me. I was stunned. I'm still stunned. I'm in a different jersey. I came here early just so I could be by myself at Target Center and sit here and just soak up the energy that I know is still here from my time here, and just kind of for myself with no Knicks personnel around here, no teammates, no coaches, nobody, just to be able to reminisce a little bit." And, you feel that, right? That's an emotional return for a place, and that's the business of the NBA, right? In no way that Karl-Anthony Towns was he asking for his way out of Minnesota, and Minnesota made that trade in part due to, money, right? And wanting to free up a little bit of money long-term when it comes down to it. It's no doubt that Karl-Anthony Towns is the best player in that trade, and the Knicks, they've come out of it better. If you're looking at a winner right now, the Knicks are the winner of that trade, right? And it's helped them tremendously. You look at them, they're 17-10 on the season. They still have a lot of growth that they need to do defensively that they've been doing over time as well. But it's no doubt that this trade is giving the Knicks what they want. And keep in mind, you still got Mitchell Robinson potentially coming back to that team, right? And what does it look like when that happens? And with Karl-Anthony Towns' time playing with Rudy Gobert, how does that help him kind of adjust playing with Mitchell Robinson? I think that this is as a Knicks team that definitely has a chance to make some noise in the East. They have a chance to really be disruptors as well, and maybe even come out that Eastern Conference. They have the third best record, which is crazy. They're 6 games behind the number 1 Cleveland Cavaliers and 4 games behind the number 2 Boston Celtics. But the Knicks are still one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and they still got room to improve as well. And while this trade has definitely helped the Knicks be better, and that's what they wanted in this trade, of course, the Minnesota Timberwolves, it hasn't been as easy of a go. There's been chemistry fit concerns. Overall, I think those have started to get better over time. I think when you look at the plus minus with Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle on the court together, that's starting to definitely improve over time. Their defense has improved, but their offense has definitely taken a nosedive, and it just hasn't been an offense that really has had the same punch at times that the Minnesota Timberwolves did last season. And Anthony Edwards actually spoke to this, and he said this: "We don't have shit on offense. We don't have no identity. We know I'm going to shoot a bunch of shots. We know Julius Randle is going to shoot a bunch of shots. That's all we know. We don't know anything else. It's not on the coaches at all. It's on us. We're out there playing. We got to make it easier for each other. Coaches put us in a great position. We just don't do it. We got up and everybody cheering and fucking hype and getting fucking hype. We get down again and don't nobody say nothing. That's the definition of a front runner. We as a team, including myself, we all was front runners tonight. It was some bullshit for sure." And I know there are going to be some people that take issue with Anthony Edwards and what he said here, and I don't think anybody should. This is what a leader should say. This is what a leader should identify, and this is what a star in this league should be able to say. And I love that he didn't separate himself from it. He made sure that he put himself in there, and that's the thing that makes it different from what some players would have gone about this and just talking generalities. Anthony Edwards put himself front of this criticism, and it's something that probably needs to be heard. You need more players, in my opinion, that stand out and talk about things like this. And the way that Anthony Edwards responded to this, hopefully this is something that pushes this team to improve. Because this is a sign of why when you change some things, you're not always going to get the same success that you got before. It's always a dangerous notion in the NBA to make changes to something that worked. And while the Timberwolves found themselves on the precipice of making the NBA Finals last year, they ultimately did not, mainly because of not this, but this definitely has now made them to where they've taken a step back. They're not a team you no longer look at and say this is a team that can make the finals. This is a team that can make it out the West, and they're gonna have to figure it out. But that's kind of what this team wanted in a case like this, right? They're not done. changing this roster. They're not done making changes overall. This is not the final version that they're going to have, and that's part of why they made this trade, to gain some cap flexibility overall. Do they move Julius Randle? It's a possibility, especially with him having a player option of $30 million next year. Do they move Jaden McDaniels? That's also a possibility, as he's in his extension will be making $30 million in 2028, 29. And so I said earlier, when you look at the numbers, Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle, when they're on the court together, are fine. Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert, when they're on the court, they're fine. There's something about Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, and Jaden McDaniels all on the court together that is just not getting done, and there's something that throws that off in that time period. And the Timberwolves have to try to figure that out. If they can't, this is why they made the move. They have some flexibility to do some other things with the roster, and I do think that the Timberwolves are a candidate to make a big move between now and the end of the season. I do think that there's a chance of them doing that. How big of a chance that is, it depends on what the market is and what calls they're getting or calls they're making. But I'd say look out for the Timberwolves to make a move here, to kind of make their roster make a little bit more sense, fit a little bit better together. And I think that's the ultimate thing that you need here, is that they have to make this thing fit better together. And, their first round pick this year is going to Utah. They could possibly have the Detroit Pistons pick if it falls anywhere number 14 to 30, which, it may, considering that the Pistons aren't that far off from being in the Eastern Conference play-in picture. But I think, this is a team that's poised to make a move. And I think that they may be aggressive enough to try to make that move, especially if you're listening to your star in Anthony Edwards and how frustrated he seems to currently be with this team. But let me know what you guys think. When you look at the different ways that these teams have gone and where they now stand in their respective conferences as well, between the Knicks and the Minnesota Timberwolves, who do you think won this trade right now in the short term? And do you think the Minnesota Timberwolves can turn this thing around using Julius Randle, whatever else, to where it can make more sense? But I think, the Knicks got the better talent. Karl-Anthony Towns was the best player moved in this trade. And naturally, they're also in the Eastern Conference, so they're going to have an easier path. But I think overall, the Minnesota Timberwolves right now being 8th, and they're only a half a game from being out the play-in when it's all coming down because of how close that Western Conference is, it really makes, a big difference. And we know in the West, a hot week or a cold week can completely change the direction of where you're going. So let me know what you guys think on that down below. Last topic before we get out of here today, the Milwaukee Bucks reportedly, this one is according to Jake Fisher and Mark Stein, that they are making calls to make a move to complement Brook Lopez, saying this: Milwaukee has made calls to explore ways to add more of a lob threat to complement Brook Lopez, according to league sources. While the Bucks' incumbent center has generated no shortage of trade interest since last summer. So it seems like Lopez right now, he's not a lob threat, right? That doesn't fit that, but they're looking to add something to complement that. Now, to Brook Lopez, and, that's something that we've also heard, before from Mark Stein and Jake L. Fisher as well, is that centers seem to be at right now, probably one of the most coveted positions in basketball right now, right? Saying that, centers like Jonas Valanciunas, Robert Williams III, right? That teams are looking to add this to already deep front courts to try to make a go for it. Teams are looking for bigs. And so while the Milwaukee Bucks may aim to pair Brook Lopez with a lob threat, they may actually find themselves maybe a deal that makes sense for them moving on from Brook Lopez. We'll see where that comes to when it comes down to it. But who then would the Milwaukee Bucks be willing to move? You got Chris Middleton, who's still making his way back. He's not himself yet. Of course, they're hoping that he's going to round out and it's going to balance out at some point. I have my thoughts on Chris Middleton, but that's a story for another day. But the Milwaukee Bucks have a roster here that, if they want to make a move, they got some flexibility to do so. They got Bobby Portis if they do want to move on from him. I don't think they're going to want to move on from Pat Connaughton, but they got some assets that they can move if they really want to. The question is are they going to want to? That's the biggest question here. The Milwaukee Bucks don't have their own first-round pick. They can't move a first-round pick, I don't believe, until 2031 on top of that. So they're really kind of locked in with the assets that they have, but there are going to be some players out there that are available. And the question is how hard are the Milwaukee Bucks going to go for it? And the question really here is, as well as like the Milwaukee Bucks and their turnaround, how much do they view that as a realistic thing? And right now they're 5th in the Eastern Conference. They're on a 3-game winning streak, right? They've only lost a couple of games basically in the month of December. Like they're balling right now. Since November 18th, the Milwaukee Bucks have only lost 2 games. 2 games. Now, while they have not played since their NBA Cup win, They do play today against Cleveland, so that's going to be a really interesting matchup. But this is a Bucks team that, listen, their defense is turned around, their balance is turned around, their chemistry is turned around. Doc Rivers is coaching about as well as he can. And if they do look to add something to strengthen their run in the Eastern Conference, they're going to have an ability to do so. Let me ask you guys this. How much do you believe right now the run that the Milwaukee Bucks are on? Do you view them as a contender in that Eastern Conference? Do you think they're right to be looking to make a move for a more lob threat to pair with Brook Lopez? Let me know all that down below. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you're following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. And like I like to end every episode on, I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video, probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.